All right, thank you, everybody. I really can't wait for this show today. We're going to give you guys a background tour of something that is not only market changing, but it provides information in a way that we've never seen before. And this is one of the things that excites me about Era Group and their technology. Part of my doctoral thesis is around advanced organizations, autonomous operations. Advanced analytics is core to that. But before we go too deep, I'd like to introduce our host, Ed Flanagan, and our special guest, Matt Pusey. Now, I'm hoping I'm pointing the right direction. I never really know where I am on other people's screens. But Matt, let's go ahead and kick this off. A lot of exciting things happening in the business. But before we get too far into what's happening at the business level, I'd love for the audience who may not know you to learn a little bit of your background. Give us a little bit of background on how you got to become part of the Era Group team.
Sure, happy to do so. Chris, so my background is in international business development. For me personally, I actually grew up in Tokyo, Japan as a young boy, where I learned Japanese firsthand. And then I lived in Taiwan for a number of years as well. And I fell in love with helping, supporting, and really helping just companies to develop their business and their efforts in international business. And recently, Charlie Smith, our Asia Pacific and North America CEO, asked me to come on and help support the team here in North America. And he knows my skill set related to helping individuals and companies to really be able to integrate their best efforts to drive results. And so he asked me to come on, and I'm excited to be here. It's a wonderful network full of a lot of vibrant individuals that are really just top of their game. And so it's great to be here.
Love it. I love having leadership as part of this. And so Ed is a founding national practice leader. Ed, for those who are not part of the fifth of these series, it's the first time they're in, I want you to sit back in that CFO seat. And I'm the Era Group person, and I'm coming to you telling you there's savings underneath the business. So you as a CFO, let's walk us through your history, ultimately the decision you made to bring Era Group in, and then how it got you on the team.
Sure. So Chris, my background, I started in public accounting, and then I got into the home building industry as an internal auditor, a controller, then a CFO. And then back in 2009, somebody from Era Group came out to visit and asked if we could, if they could look at our expenses. And I said, well, that's my responsibility. So I kind of shooed them away, and they came back in 60 days and they said, how are things going? And I said, well, we've made some good efforts, but then I got pulled over here, I got pulled over there, and we never really got to finding savings. And they said, well, can we get a shot? And I said, yeah, see what you can do. And within 90 days, they came back with $250,000 in savings. Now, I might have gotten some savings, but I don't think I would have gotten $250,000 in savings. So what happened after that is that our company did not survive the financial crisis of 2009. We weren't able to sell any houses because people couldn't qualify and get mortgages. So at that time, I was in transition, and I looked into opportunities and got to know more about the Era Group. And I said, well, it'd be nice to be an entrepreneur, to work for myself. The carrots out there to find savings and sharing the savings with the client. And I decided to jump in 16 years ago in 2009. And what I like about the Era Group is that we find savings for our clients, and they could be nonprofits, they could be distributors, they could be manufacturers, they could be in the healthcare. So we have 50 different areas that we focus on. And the nice thing about the Era Group is we have these specialists in each area that have benchmark data, they understand the industry, and they really bring some savings opportunities to our clients, and they make me look good. So I really enjoy what I'm doing now. A great work-life balance, and as Matt said earlier, a great team of people to work with.
Love this. I love this. And so I think one of the things we want to do in this episode is really touch on the scenarios for which Era Group is brought in. So I've got a COO, I've got a CFO, and I myself am a CEO, multiple times serial founder, and I've held a P&L. And so we talk about savings, but we really don't bridge the gap between what does savings mean from a business context. So before I give a CEO's take on what I would do when savings are uncovered, or what I've been asked to do as a senior product leader when savings are uncovered and we have new budget, Matt, I'm going to ask you, as a COO, when you're looking at all of the moving pieces of an organization, and you're getting to that middle part of the year and budget's running a little hot, capital's running a little short in terms of the budget that's necessary. When you have an opportunity to engage in understanding how to save money and how to then deploy that money across the operation, what's your thought process as a COO? Where do you go straight to the CFO, or do you normally go into that your own? How do you do that? Is it collaborative fashion?
I think that's a great question, Chris. I think it's a partnership as much as anything. I think that obviously the CFO is a key player in all of this, but then being COO, the team of operations team that's doing the day-to-days are important. But I think one of the things that's challenging for a lot of organizations is getting that visibility. There's a lot of moving parts, particularly in large organizations, that it's hard to both visualize all those different moving pieces. It could be PLs that are coming in or going out. It could be different bids for situations. It could be any number of items that an organization is working to engage in. And yet it's hard to be able to have all those moving pieces in one place and to be able to get that visibility. So for me, it's a partnership of bringing the right people together and having the right partners come together in order to develop a strategy together.
Love that. Now, from a CFO's perspective, I think one of the things that oftentimes happens, and especially Ed, you experience yourself, is there's a portion of it that tends to be adversarial because that's my domain. So as a CFO, when you finally converted over, what was that thought process like? Why did you ultimately say, you know what, I'll give Aero Group a shot? And then how did that experience ultimately change your perspective on maybe it's not adversarial, maybe it's actual partnership?
It wasn't adversarial. It was just that, why should I share the savings with an outside consultant if I can get them myself? So what I realized is that as a CFO, you've got a long list of to-dos. And one of the top is to make sure costs are under control. And what I realized is that that's an important priority, but if I'm not going to get to it, I'm wasting savings opportunities. So why not bring an outside consultant in and have them do all the work? They gather the data, they do RFPs, and the nice thing is they do audits afterwards. So all these invoices we're getting, one of our responsibilities is to check that they measure up to what was negotiated, and the Aero Group does that for you. So I said, why not give them an opportunity, and if they can negotiate, better terms, better supplier relationships, and find savings, it's well worth the effort.
It's interesting because there was a portion of life we have the in-betweens, right? So, our economy is now very cyclical. It's almost like a massive disruption every 10 years, every 8 years. We go from the financial crisis, we get our breath, we get our feet up back under us, COVID. Okay, we're getting our breath back under us. And now we're in a little bit more of a turbulent and complex environment. And so, Matt, as a COO, when you're trying to balance risk and complexity and volatility, how important is it that cost savings or cost projections be something that you're managing to a T along with your team?
I think it's vital. I think it's truly foundational for a business to be able to operate and to be able to make decisions. I think, again, going back to the visibility, I think one of the challenging things is a lot of staff and teams most organizations run very lean and they're very efficient with what they do, but that doesn't give the team then the bandwidth to go back and then review some of the things that may need to be reviewed in greater detail. I think the challenge is that those teams are working hard with their day-to-days, that being able to step back and look at the big picture as a whole is sometimes something that's challenging for many organizations, I would say.
From a visibility standpoint, Ed, as a CFO, what tools do you have available to you, like in the typical organization, to manage cost?
Well, what we do, Chris, is we set budgets up. We have a budget. We're an annual budget. We actually go 5 years out. And we say, here's what we're hoping to accomplish with revenue. And then we have some costs that are direct costs, depending on the revenue. And then we have other costs that are fixed costs. And we set a budget up. We have hopefully a profit in the budget, and then we look at it each month. We say, okay, we're hoping to make $50,000 this month. We look at the actual results, and then we compare and contrast and try to find answers for why we didn't hit our goals. And
Okay.
and if we hit our goals, we get bonuses. If we don't, we try to do better in the future.
But the future comes very choppy. I want to stick with you, Ed. So let's go this way. So we're in 2024. We have a projection. We're in the second year of our 5-year projection. Things are kind of running smooth. But 2025, there's some turbulence that's not expected. And now all of a sudden, all of the model from a profitability standpoint, even if you're running a lean model, doesn't exist anymore. It's a combination of interest rates. It's a combination of trade pressures. It's a combination of supplier pressures. How do you manage all of that when you're managing so many other things as a CFO?
That's a difficult situation, Chris. It's hard to manage everything. You try to do the best you can. You've only got a certain amount of time during the day. You only have a certain amount of staff that can help you out. And the bad things is, you might have to, let people go. You might have to, do things that you're not happy about to survive.
So Ed, I'm going to piggyback off of that. Matt, I'll ask you. So we're in the same organization now. So I've come to you, Matt, and I was like, I don't think we have this under control. We need to find a way to save costs now. And I'm confiding in you as the COO. How do you broker that conversation that potentially it's time to explore some additional support with the CFO, who typically likes to control that side? How do you broker that conversation?
That's a good question. I think a lot of it is, again, finding the right partner and finding the right team that would be able to discuss those things, whether that is internal or bringing in a team that would have expertise. I think a lot of organizations have expertise within their own areas, but there might be certain areas outside of their normal day-to-day operations that they're not considering. Some of those direct costs, again, could scale very, very quickly, but it's something that they don't personally have expertise in. And so again, their product or their offering may have expertise in that specific area, but then there may be other areas where they don't have that same expertise. And so helping to communicate the need to gather a team of experts that can be leveraged beyond your own borders of a company, I think is an important conversation.
The interesting thing about the model, and one of the things that drew me to it, is that if people understand baseball, the sport of baseball, I'll be really quick. There are 9 positions on baseball. There's an infield and there's an outfield, and every single one of those positions has their own specialty. They do their own particular thing. And the contribution of the entire 9 ultimately leads to championships when everybody's on the same accord. And the reason why Era Group is so appealing, in my perspective, is that when we talk about the specialists, we talk about category specialists. So as a CFO, you're like the general manager of a team. You understand basically the ins and outs of the team, but you may not be an expert on a catcher. Ultimately, that position may need somebody like, let's say, your bench coach, who really knows catch. They were former catcher. This guy is going to be great for our system. And when I think about that, potentially, if we're looking at a profit and loss, let's say, for example, logistics cost. I have no background in logistics as the CEO. Ultimately, my background is in opening new markets, entering them. My CFO comes from a very strong international business relationship like my COO, but I need help in logistics. Ed, Era Group specialists, let's talk about the category experts. How do they come in at the individual category level and contribute to ultimately producing those high savings that we see?
So, Chris, if I have, let's say, a manufacturer that has a big spend in freight, it could be ocean freight, it could be truckload, less than truckload, it could be small parcel. So I bring in a fellow from Connecticut, and his background is in freight. So he's been doing freight for ERA for over 10 years. He knows all the freight companies. He has benchmark data to know if the client is getting a good price or not. And he's able to negotiate, better terms. And a lot of times the clients are using multiple freight companies. He's able to consolidate that. He's able to play them against one another. He starts out by mapping out all the routes. So we had a client a couple of years ago where During the year, they had 866 different routes. So he took a spreadsheet, he wrote down all the routes from here to there, the miles, and he went out with an RFP. And the various trucking firms bid on those that opportunity, and we came back and found over $1 million in savings. And then what he does, Chris, is those savings came from 3 different truck firms, and then he gave the client a cheat sheet, and he said, you know, if you're going to go from the New Jersey manufacturing plant down south, you want to use this trucking firm. If you're going to go from New Jersey up to New England, you want to use this trucking firm. Then they also had a plant out in Cincinnati. So if you're going from Cincinnati to the West Coast, you want to use this firm. So each trucking firm had different lanes that they were better priced at than the competitors. And then what he does when he does his audit during the upcoming month, he'll go back to the client and say, you know what, you were only 80% compliant with the cheat sheet. There's 20% of your routes you didn't take advantage of the best pricing. So the person that's responsible for the P&L, you know, made sure that did not happen in the future, that they were compliant, they took advantage of all the possible savings that were out there.
Adam, let's stay with you. Who on your team, you're back in your CFO seat, who on your team, the typical finance team, has the expertise you just described in logistics, or the time to do what you just said?
We didn't have anybody with that experience.
So that one more time. I think we had a mic.
I'm sorry, what's that, Chris?
Okay, perfect. So Matt, I'll ask you. Let's take it back up to the operations level, and now you're talking to the fellow COO community. Ultimately, as you're looking at the market, and there's volatility, complexity, there's so many things that are rising. Risk is rising. How are you counseling these COOs across the board and the clients that you're in to navigate these really choppy waters?
That's a great question. Each scenario needs to have its own independent review is what I would recommend. Right now, I think that there isn't one solution for every scenario, particularly when working with different vendors or different suppliers. You want to remain as consistent as possible in your relationships. And so some organizations, when they engage us or other consulting firms, are concerned that there might be a disruption to business, meaning that, well, if I'm going to have to switch a supplier, isn't that going to be disruptive? But what we actually find is that in many cases, savings can even be found with an incumbent supplier. But because our experts have information in an index that they can then reference and say, hey, right now you're actually overpaying by X amount, and then use a bit of leverage, use that information as leverage to help bring those choppy waters down to more stable conditions. So that, again, if you see an increase, you can know that that increase was industry-wide, or in fact, it wasn't. Sometimes just that information alone is helpful in making those decisions to offer greater stability.
I think the stability part is key. One of the things that I've loved being part of now the 5th of these panels, whether it was from a client standpoint with Michelle, a CFO in the healthcare space, who contributed. Hey, Michelle, thank you so much. With David, who's a specialist in the healthcare space, Becky and Bree, ultimately Ted, David, and the others who have contributed, is that 2/3 of the time, the incumbent provider remains. And one of the examples that I love to hear about is gloves. In the healthcare space, you typically can see that if you don't involve the clinical operations team early on in the conversation, and you just run in gangbusters and you're trying to go straight for savings versus quality, then you may deliver exceptional savings, but terrible quality. And now you're talking about gloves that rip. And I think one of the things that I love about Era Group's model is that you're actually an extension of the team. It's an integration into the operation so that people who are affected by conversions or conversations that ultimately could lead to a disruption have their voice heard. Now, Matt, I'm going to go back to you. From a model perspective, is that indicative of the culture that you all are setting, or has that just been the lifelong of Era?
So it's absolutely part of the culture. So when we start a meeting with any given organization, we bring in stakeholders from every facet of the business to be able to bring in their individual expertise. So again, you're taking our across the industry expertise and their in-house expertise, and those two together, that's a powerful combination. And so again, you talk about quality and ensuring quality. In many cases, again, talking gloves, you might be able to find the exact same SKU at a better price just by being able to go out and bid on those and being able to find the exact same quality, but at a better price.
Love that. Ed, as
Yeah,
we
Chris,
as we talk,
let me jump on that.
yeah,
The other thing they do, as Matt said, is they go out and bid the exact same SKU from the various suppliers. And then what they do is they ask the suppliers, are there any other products that have comparable quality as the SKU where we could offer additional savings? So what we do is when we go out to the market, we tell them, here's the price on exactly what you're buying, and here's some alternatives for you to test out. So what we'll do is we'll get the chief nursing officer involved. We'll send out a pack of gloves and have everybody try them out. And then hopefully they'll come back and say, hey, these work as good as what the other ones work. And there's 30% savings.
so we've talked numbers, but I really want to talk about the fact that these are not atypical numbers. More than 90% of the time, savings are identified. More than 2/3 of the time, it's with the incumbent provider. These are very critical metrics for people to really understand. It's not necessarily the negotiation side, it's really understanding the supplier market deeply, right? And so if you're leading the finance operation, you have to be an expert in the business of your business, end to end, where the costs are, what are the processes that are increasing costs, what are the production, all of that for the business, right? So let's use General Electric. Okay, as the CFO of General Electric, or whole organism, whole ecosystem, if there are tens of thousands of suppliers for General Electric, that CFO, in order to do what Air Group is great at, would have to be an expert in those tens of thousands. And so, Matt, I'll come back to you as we're about to transition into a really special demonstration here. I'd like to talk to you about the model and the forward look. As you all are expanding as a business, made incredible headway over the last month, what are some of the things that you're looking forward to before we show people how powerful the technology side of the business is?
Yeah, that's great, Chris. So thank you for the opportunity to kind of introduce where we are as an organization and things that we're working on. So we're investing heavily within our technology and SpendView technology and cost intelligence technology to be able to deliver the most effective, most concise, most clear tools that organizations are seeking. I think there are so many organizations out there that want information and need information in order to make those decisions, but without that, it's challenging. The number of transactions that any given organization is going to be engaged in is something that can get very massive very quickly. And so to be able to make that palatable in a way that could be absorbed, evaluated, and then decisions made is something that I think every organization is looking for. And so I think investing within your own company and your own visibility within your finances is something that's very important for a lot of organizations to do.
Ed, you talked about setting up budgets and tracking. What technology is used to set up those budgets? What do you use? Is it Excel? Is it like what technologies are typically used as a CFO to track budgets?
You're going to use a combination of your CRM and also with your software package for accounting and also with Excel. So you set up a lot of, a lot of situations where you want to make sure that you are accurate with your projections. So you're going to look at the general ledger. You're going to compare what your budget was with the actuals, and then you're going to investigate any big variances and make sure that you're aware of what happened. It might be volume that happened, or it might be mismanagement of the expenses. And if you find those inaccuracies, you want to ask operations what happened and try to resolve it and make sure it doesn't happen again.
That's 3 systems. That's Excel, that's a CRM, and that's an accounting system. We'll assume, and not necessarily always the case, that the CRM and the accounting system are integrated. The Excel spreadsheet is typically not. And let's say the Excel, because of its ease of use, is the source of truth. between the two. There is no reconciliation. And I'm leading with that because I want to introduce to the audience spin view technology. And what I really see as the most powerful is a unified view. I think the thing that as a leader that would scare me is I'm evaluating companies from a ventures perspective, being the CEO of Chambers Capital Ventures, is that I need to get a unified view of what's going on from cost management and a revenue perspective. CRM functions perfectly, but the accounting system functions pseudo perfectly. But I know that from a process standpoint, Excel is king in the market. And so one of the things that attracts me and draws me to Era Group is that I get a unified presentation of the information. And so what I'd like to do here for the audience is we're going to do a scenario. And I'd like for you all to come on a journey with me. So I'm going to sit in the CEO seat. I'm evaluating an organization. Era Group is now going to consult me on their operating costs. Right now, this organization has 70 million in expenditure. So if you're a larger organization, billion, think 350 million to 700 million, depending on the multiple billions. 85,000 plus transactions, 1,400 unique payee names, meaning vendors. And the top 10 payees account for 58% of the expenditure. So let's go a little bit deeper. At this point right here, Matt, I'll start with you. Ed, I'll start with you. Ed, I'll follow up with you. Matt, what am I looking at as you are presenting this information to me? I know how to digest it, but what is this view here?
This is just a high-level snapshot of the entire organization. Again, reviewing the expenditure, the number of transactions. I think that a lot of organizations understand the numbers that are going in and out of the budget, but I don't know that all of them have the number of transactions that are associated behind those numbers. And so being able to see kind of the behind the scenes curtain of your own organization in number of transactions and number of unique payees. Again, when you consider an organization that's 70 million still has 1,400 unique payee names, that's quite a few. And that makes it challenging to be able to visualize all that in a simple, easy, and palatable way.
Love this. Ed, when the client first sees this, what is typically their first reaction to getting this high level information before we go a level deeper? How do they typically ingest it? Because I could see it being a little bit of a shock.
Well, their first impression is, as Matt said, look at all those transactions, look at all the vendors. And then the other thing is 10 payees make up 58%. Typically, when we go up to the top 20 payees, they normally make up 80%. It's the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. So when we see that 20 vendors make up 80%, we look at the tail spend and we're thinking, man, there's a lot of vendors out there that need to get consolidated. And by doing that, there's opportunities for savings and better management of the vendors.
Thank you. I love that. I'll tell you one of the interesting things. So I've worked a lot with HR and vendor management groups. The very first thing that this gives me the opportunity to do is look and go, we need to reduce our number of vendors, do unique payee names. If we're looking at the Pareto's principle and the top 20% of these vendors account for 80% of the revenue, then we need to look at the bottom 20% and start reducing, because the amount of vendors that have the access to be able to reach out to the organization, 30 minutes here, 30 minutes here, 30 minutes here, times hundreds of companies, I've lost thousands and tens of thousands of organizational hours talking to vendors when they should be contributing to the end customer and what delivers value. So I definitely can see. Let's go one level deeper. I really want to go to this next area, which is I want to look at the enterprise view. So I'll set this up. So what I'm looking at is I have 5 cost centers across America, in the Northwest, the Midwest, the South, and the East Coast. And with these 85,000 plus almost 86,000 transactions, one of the things that this view is informing me of is where each of the cost centers are from a spend perspective, and then ultimately what is addressable and non-addressable. So Matt, I'll take your attention to that. The immediate thing I look at is addressable, right? Because I'm trying to make a snap decision. What does that truly mean? Is this the areas where I can actually realize savings? Walk me through what that means from a presentation standpoint.
Yeah, so this slide is a great one, as you mentioned, Chris. This one really helps to highlight, again, the location and where that spend is actually going through. So we collect 12 months worth of AP data so that we can then really give a full year's worth of snapshots. Some things might be seasonal. You might see a different uptick at different times. And then the addressable versus non-addressable. So that's really a high level shot of what we believe is going to be addressable within this organization, which you can notice is the vast majority of transactions.
Now, Ed, when a client is looking at this information, I think something that kind of stands out to me is that there's no massive variations. I mean, the cost overrun in July, but the CFO, when you're seeing this, what are your initial thoughts as you're about to go a little bit deeper? What are your initial thoughts as a CFO as you see this now?
The thing is with the monthly expenditures, as you can see, it's pretty static. You know, there's no seasonality, it looks like, within their spend. And if I knew that my business, there is seasonality, I would question, like, what the hell's going on? Why are the expenses all the same? When we added a client in April and we had a lot more expenses, that might raise a question. And then the addressable and the non-addressable are things that we can help the client with. Examples would be like taxing, payments to taxing authority, property insurance, intercompany transactions within the organization. Those are things that we can't look at. The addressable items are usually within the 50 categories that we have expertise within.
Absolutely. So I'll interpret where I would have some questions as a leader. And so I would see here, I'm looking at addressable of 57.64 million in this example. And I'm looking at the status quo. And I would ask you, Ed, are you saying to me that we have the ability to address potentially in that 57.64 million, all things being equal, the opportunity to realize savings? Is that what this is saying to me?
This is saying through our eyes, there's expenses of 57 million that we could help them with, but we need to go a little bit deeper, which we'll see on the future screens. So within that 57,000, it'll break out what the costs are between, let's say, freight and packaging and MRO and telephone and all that. And then we'll talk to the client about, you know, are these areas that we'd like us to help you with?
Now we get to the meat and potatoes. This is an incredible view of the aggregate expenses of the organization. And so, Matt, I'm going to ask you. So now I'm sitting in the client seat, and my jaw has dropped. The reason being is because the first thing that is out to me is that from an operations perspective, 673 suppliers, but it only makes up 8% of the category. And so, Matt, can you walk me through kind of what this data says at a high level? And then, Ed, I'll have a scenario for you I'd love for you to answer.
Yeah, there's a lot in this slide, right? This is really kind of where we really go a level deeper and show the information in a way that we can, again, pull out some thoughts and some action. So you highlighted the 673 at 8%. That's definitely one that we would want to start looking at and ask some questions as to why. So then also on the reverse side, the production materials at 84 is the vast majority of the spend as well. And so if there are savings to be realized, considering, well, maybe production materials, and if we can even get a small savings in any given area of that, it would have a high impact. And so that's where the discussion starts.
So, Ed, let's zero in on production materials. I purposely left that one because that's the first place that anybody's likely to jump because it's such a significant portion of the overall expenditure. Is the gut reaction to focus purely on the total volume, the vendor count? Where do you typically have a kind of guide to help the customer really internalize where the error group is potentially going to start?
First, if you look at the middle column where it talks about production material, you've got production material, 23,000 transactions, you got intercompany equipment and to be determined. Those are areas that the client focuses on every day. That's the core of their business. So typically what we do is we don't initially start in those areas. We start in what we call overhead non-core cost. And once we can demonstrate our technical expertise, our benchmark data, at that point, the client may come back and say, this $24 million in production material, is there an opportunity for you to help you there? But it's something that we don't typically attack unless it's a pain point for them right out of the chute.
Absolutely. And so that's great, because the example that you gave earlier, and I'm sure you probably set this up, you being a golf player, you know how to tee up a ball for a great shot, is the logistics side, right? And so if I'm sitting and I'm looking at this and I'm immediately thinking to myself, I just had a conversation with my COO about how can we get logistics costs down. Now I get to see where it really is, and it's in transport. It's one of the most significant buckets. But below that are the operating supplies. And so, Ed, when you're guiding a customer or guiding an implementation, right, and the customer's like, you know what, I'd like to understand more about how we could actually realize savings. The tactical team that you put together, where do they focus if this is the actual presentation? Is it in operating supplies, facilities, or is it in logistics?
It's in all the areas, Chris. I mean, we have expertise in all these areas. I mean, obviously, we like to work on the categories with the bigger spend because there's a bigger opportunity for savings, but we need to talk to the client. Where are you having issues at? And the thing is, when we negotiate a contract with them, we're going to try to put in all the categories that are possible. And let's say we look at 20 different categories, we're going to tell them, let's start out with 2 or 3. Let's let you understand our process, get familiar with it. And but I can start all 20 because I can bring in 20 specialists, but it'll be overwhelming for the client. So if we start 2 or 3, let them understand the process. We do a baseline report. We then go out to the market with an RFP, come back and summarize it in an options report. And then once they select which way to go in the future, we then provide audits every month. So once they see how it works, we'll say, okay, let's go and tackle a couple more projects. And then during, a 2-3 year period, we could knock all 20 of those out. And then they might say, well, how about the production material? Can you help us with our steel purchasing or plastics purchasing, whatever it might be?
So it's kind of a stair-step approach, which is you find the place where you can be impactful but least disruptive. You enter into that place, and then as you are demonstrating your capabilities to not disrupt but ultimately deliver, then it kind of expands from there. And I noticed you said something about 3 years. And for the audience that understands that context or doesn't, excuse me, what do you mean by 3 years? Are you overseeing in the 3-year span? Give me a little bit of that so we can hit the next slide impactfully.
So when we sign an agreement with the client, we're willing to share savings for a 3-year period. The other thing I forgot to mention, Chris, is when we determine which areas to start with, we have to focus on existing contracts. We might go in and look at telecommunications, but they're under a 3-year contract with 2 years to go. So what we might have to do is sit back on the sideline and wait till we get closer to 6 months before renewal. The same thing with insurance. Insurance renews every year. Their business insurance and their property and casualty and their health benefits. So we have to, we want to try to get started 120 days before the renewal period ends. So the other thing is we try to work on categories that are a quick turnaround to start with. Certain categories like telecommunications, that could take up to like 6 months to get all the data and negotiate all the contracts. We start with a couple of the categories that we know won't be under contract and we can turn around pretty quick. And then have them get a taste of how we operate.
Matt, I'll ask before we transition to the next slide. So now you're my COO. So I'm looking at this data in real time. You're looking at the data. What are your initial thoughts on how to attack, how to approach? Because this looks very powerful. What are you thinking when you first see something like this?
I think it's a good question. I think what it is being able to get even deeper. When I look at this as a COO, if I were seeing this for the very first time, I would want to see even deeper than this. And while we're showing a presentation here, when we go to this, we can offer a live demo where we can actually dig down even deeper than what this shows in our current presentation we show today. Because for me, if I'm a COO, I want to get into that transportation number. I want to get into the details and really understand what's contributing to all of that. Understand the specific vendors, where there's overlap, where there isn't overlap, where there are gaps, and starting to dig into that. But again, I would want to go a level deeper. And so being able to both see this high level and then start having those conversations with the team, but then also being able to extract the deeper level information and get into it.
Love it. Let's transition. Let's go to Pareto's analysis. All righty. So one of the things we started with in the initial slide is that top 10 pays account for 58% of the total expenditure. And so, Ed, can you walk me through what this analysis does, from the standpoint of being able to help visualize where to focus first?
Well, on the top part of the graph, you can see that there's over 1,430 vendors, and 10 of them make up 58%. So the thing is, why are there so many other vendors? And if you look at each of the individual categories down below, you can get an idea of where there might be opportunities for consolidation. So this is a good way of focusing on the vendors, how much the spend is, and where there's opportunities for consolidating vendors and hopefully finding significant savings.
So, Matt, from an operations perspective, 1,400 vendors are now in the organization. Top 10 pays make up 58% of the total expenditure. What are you thinking as you're looking at this depth of information, and now you get a real understanding from a visual perspective of what could be emerging deltas?
That's a great question. I think I'd go a lot where Ed went with this one is, why are there so many vendors? What are the ones that are duplicating our efforts, where we're spending, as we mentioned earlier, just too much of our team's time, even just communicating? Emails add up. A lot of day-to-day efforts add up. And if we're spreading our efforts so thin to where we're not getting the best use of our time within our teams, that's what I would consider, is how much time this is taking away from my team in managing all these different disparate vendors.
Chris, you remember the first slide, we showed that there was 5 different profit centers, right? 5 different locations.
Yep.
But typically what happens is each location is negotiating contracts just for that location. They're not taking advantage of consolidating the total spend and getting, savings opportunities. So that's why they have so many vendors, because each organization, each center is doing their own negotiating and has their own set of vendors.
From a subcategory, so I'm going to take you, Ed, down a little bit further here. There's a green, and then there's the gray. The green may indicate the 58% of the top 10, but can you walk me through the subcategory analysis? What am I actually looking at?
The green and the gray are the expenditures in that area, and the top 10 are the green, and the gray is all the other vendors that they have.
So from a quick high level, I'm talking about just gut reaction. As I look at this, there are some things that are easily discernible. Depending on how critical the production materials cost providers are, that gray area in these green boxes represent kind of immediate savings, right? Like we're talking about just gut reaction. And that visualization, if that's the gut reaction, I'm going to want to go a little bit deeper. I need to understand, like Matt, I have an operations mind as I'm trying to enter into an emerging market. So I'm a CEO. I've tasked the team to come up with opportunities to create budget because we have to do it from the existing operations. And so I want to go a little bit deeper into supplier diversity so that we can talk about how a team can be put together between operations, between finance, and ultimately create the opportunity for the organization to turn savings into reinvestment. So Ed, walk me through this now. We're at supplier density. I need to understand the top 5 versus the next 5. What are you articulating in this slide when you're presenting it to me?
So what you're seeing here, Chris, is for instance, in production materials, the top 5 vendors make up $24 million of their spend. The next 5 make up $6 million, and then the balance is the gray shade. So in each one of these expense areas, you can see that, if you look at the facilities management, there's $2 million of spend in the vendors that are from 11 on. So that's a good opportunity for savings. Look at all the vendors in the operation supplies.
Yeah.
You got the top 5, $1.5 million, another $500,000. You've got $3.3 million in the vendors that are, more than 10, from a vendor 11 onto the future. So there's good opportunities where you see the gray, the brown areas for consolidation.
Now, Matt, I'll ask you. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, well, the first place that I think there would be opportunity is in that 3.3 million because it looks like vendor sprawl. But ultimately, if you're looking at this from an operations standpoint, now you've gone a level deeper. What's the first place that you look at as an operations mind and go, hey, that might be the area we want to focus in first? Because everything's about prioritization.
Yeah, prioritization is obviously key, Chris. I think that for me as an organization, I'm considering my relationships with a lot of these different vendors. I've had lots of conversations with my team as far as for what they are, the teams that they're working with and their sub teams and these vendor relationships. And I'm considering, just being honest, the relationships that are either better or worse. Those vendors that are delivering to me on time, I think quality, cost, and delivery. And so I'm considering and balancing those things of, well, where am I getting the best quality? Where am I getting the best delivery? And I want to balance that with the team. But I think that it's important that we understand just really working closely with our teams and not just doing this at an individual and executive level, but bringing in the proper stakeholders to be able to voice their opinions on this. So this is a team and a collaborative effort.
Question, as I'm looking at this and I'm correlating data, top 5, is in some cases it based on the expenditure total or is it based on the transaction amount? I'd like to understand a little bit more as I'm looking at the right side versus the left side. How do we define the top 5 and the next 5?
So on the left side, Chris, the 24 million is what we paid to the top 5 vendors.
Got it.
The next one is what we paid to the next 5. And then the brown area, since there's 84 total, what we paid to the other 74 vendors. So in the operation supplies, if you take 673 total vendors, they have 663 vendors that they paid 3.3 million. And as Matt mentioned, that's a good opportunity to focus on.
That's powerful. I mean, that in and of itself with the proper context, again, what I'm looking at is that, where can we create money so that I can enter in this new market, so that I can make this acquisition, right? Maybe it's a small acquisition that I make to expand the capabilities of the company, or we can free up budget and acquire a logistics company that's for sale, and now I can reduce some of the logistics cost across the organization, turn it into intercompany expenditure. So I love this slide, and I love that context. Would it be safe to say at a high level, I'm out in the market, I'm reviewing solutions, I come across Era Group and I come across SpinView technology, I download the form. Would it be safe to say that gray, that is a great indicator if I were to engage and say, hey, that's likely the area we want to focus on? Is that how we, Matt, I'll ask you first and then Ed to kind of tie it off before we go to the next slide.
I think it is. Again, what we want to do is, again, talk with the organization, listen to them, understand from the stakeholders' perspective where they want to engage first. So our team is really here to be consultants, to offer them the best advice. But ultimately, each organization is going to have both the freedom and the ability to make their own decisions. But that partnership in identifying which ones we want to tackle first is that conversation.
Ed, for you, as final thoughts on this slide?
So Chris, over on the right side are the top vendors. So you can see the top vendor is intercompany. So that's transactions back and forth within the 5 divisions. So we can't help them there. The next couple vendors, a lot of times the client realizes, I understand the first 2 vendors. I didn't even realize CHS was one of our top vendors. They may not realize that. So this shows, the focus on where their top vendors are and lets management know, and they may be surprised at that.
Great information. Now our top end. Now we're really looking here. Now we're getting really, really deep into the data here. When we're looking at that top 10 in terms of where to go, we're going to go, I didn't know that CHS Inc., right? And we'll just theorize what CHS Inc. is for this presentation. So Matt, I'm asking for number 4, I had no idea that they made up that much of the spend. I didn't think they were that critical to the organization. My immediate gut reaction is I believe we're overpaid. Now, Matt, as the leader here, as you're looking at that, what are the things that you as a COO would now want to do since you've been illuminated to a what we consider non-critical component being so well paid? How do you go about mobilizing this effort to go a little bit deeper than just the top 10?
That's a great question, Chris. Again, going beyond the top 10 and how we engage the team, I think that it really starts with understanding the number of transactions within each company here, and that you would then identify the team that is engaged with that particular vendor, bring them in as a stakeholder, and then interview them. So we actually do individual stakeholder meetings for each individual group and gather a plan and establish an action plan for both additional information needed, next steps that we would recommend, and then we start implementing.
And from a 3-year management perspective, given that there there are contracts in place typically that guide a lot of business transactions, how do you, as a leader, as you're putting together your team, how do you prioritize whether it's at the vendor level or at the category level? And I know sometimes those are mutually beneficial, but where do you, as a leader, kind of zero in first? Now that I'm like, I didn't know CHS Inc. was getting so much of the pie for so little value. How do you broker that conversation from a supplier management standpoint?
Chris, you want to attack the areas that we have the best expertise. For instance, with the fleet management and the freight, we've got great leadership. We've got great specialists in that area that have benchmark data. They understand the industry. And what we want to do is focus on areas that we know we can perform and find some nice savings.
Exactly. Employee reimbursements, right? And so we're looking here. Now, this is a level deeper from an individual reimbursement perspective. Matt, you have an organization that's very widespread. There's likely a lot of travel expenses as work is shared across, geographic regions, things of that nature. But when you're looking at expenditure like this, expenditure report, what I can see here is that there's no massive deviation. I mean, you're generally around 27,000 in spend. But on average, is this a good area to start setting some policies and procedures on how much per transaction, like the limit that you have in your per diem? Is this somewhere where you would want to look at and say, hey, how can we bring this down?
Absolutely. I think policies and procedures are as important as even some of the bids that we go out to do. And so I think it's important that an organization look and see, as far as looking at this slide, to my eyes, it looks like actually they're doing pretty well and they are pretty consistent, as you mentioned. And so I guess I would feel a little bit reassured that might not be something that is top priority, but that we could help to reinforce the message of that everybody makes a difference and that everybody within the organization can help the company to succeed. And getting that partnership and that buy-in from every team member is an important step as well.
One thing that jumps out at me, and Ed, you can help me here, is there's a discrepancy, a subtle discrepancy between Rodriguez Tran's spend in meals and entertainment, and I'm putting on the CEO hat, and in Collins and White. And what I'm looking at is thinking to myself, Rodriguez and Tran better be at the top of the sales board. We're going to assume that these are sales people for this presentation, because they're spending an awful lot more on meals and entertainment. And so, Ed, let's say that I'm as a CEO, now I'm asking, hey, why are those two resources spending so much money on meals and entertainment? Ultimately, as your responsibility to the client, how do you broker that conversation that could lead to some uncomfortable conversations downstream? How do you counsel the client on being able to have that conversation?
Well, the first thing you do is you ask them, what's the policy? What's your meals and entertainment policy? And if certain of the employees are spending a lot in that area, are they bringing in revenue? Are they bringing in sales? The thing that I see here, Chris, is that there's a lot of money spent in travel.
Hmm.
So it looks like each individual employee is booking their own travel, which isn't very smart. If you have a corporate travel policy and you're taking advantage of the best prices for the air and the car and the lodging, you can find a lot of opportunities for savings. And then also I see the third employee down there, Chavez Consulting Services, $29,000. What is that for? What is he personally paying for consulting services? So I
Hmm.
have my auditor hat on and I'm asking a lot of questions and just trying to see what's going on.
Now, Matt, that's very interesting. That caught my attention as well as I'm looking through this, and then this is the depth of information that Era provides. Would ask the question, why is he the only person, or that why is this resource the only person with consulting services? No other resource being represented here is booking that amount, but that consulting services output in terms of dollars spent is near identical to the people who are traveling. And so as a COO, as you're overseeing, this is a much, fairly large organization of resources, 86,000 nearly transactions. You're talking about being able to see it from like a global view over 5 locations. What is the way that leadership can have a conversation that doesn't isolate the resource but reinforces the policy? How would you go about brokering that once you see something like this?
I think it's, again, maybe just looking in the mirror in the organization itself is, have we established the policies? Have we established clear roles and responsibilities and expectations for delivery? Have we made sure that we are clearly communicating with the team what we expect them to do and the expenses that we expect them to stay within? And have we established what we need to as a team so that it's not so much a you conversation, it's a we conversation, and helping them to feel inclusive and partnership in the savings.
I like because the thing about the business model that I love is that it's so much bigger than just the savings. It's so much bigger and broader because what we're talking about here is money and the savings are a reflection of business operations, business as usual. And so as we transition into the next slide, and I think this one's the home run hitter. Walk me through this now. I'm ready to make some decisions as a CEO. I see actionable, I see discoverable, I see non-addressable, and I see lower ROI. Ed, walk me through what it means to have an actionable area, and is this the area of core focus?
So Chris, we break down into these four quadrants, and the actual expenses, in this case, 23 million with 941 suppliers. These are areas that we work on all the time, and we feel comfortable, working and helping our clients with those. Discoverable are areas where we need a little bit more information. We're just looking at a high level here. We need to delve in a little bit further to decide whether they are actionable or maybe non-addressable. The lower ROI are areas that we can also help them with, but there's a lot of effort with a little bit of return. So those we put on the side, and we might work on those at a later date. The non-addressable is what we talked about earlier. These are areas that we can help them with. They might be tax payments. They could be real estate taxes, the intercompany expenses. These are things that we don't help them with.
So the blue is my immediate course of action. Matt, I'm going to get you into the seat where we've made a decision. So Matt, you as my COO, we've made a decision. I'm ready to move forward. And you ask Era Group to present to you what are the projected savings. When you get this back, this information, can you help me determine as a CEO why it would be great to move forward? And then we're going to land the plane here shortly.
Well, this is my favorite slide, actually, and this is actually a fairly conservative slide. So when we say 13.9%, in many cases, we're actually outpacing that by quite a bit. But so for me, it gives me hope within my own organization that I can find cost optimization. I can find this cost intelligence is giving me information in order to take action. And that's what I would be excited about is, oh, wow, there are savings to be found within our organization. It's something that we have a track record of delivering, and I want to get into it. I wouldn't want to stop. This slide speaks to me from someone who would want to engage with the Era Group.
This slide speaks to me and says that all things being considered equal, we'll call it business as usual. We know that there are tariffs, there's COVID, there's interest rates. I mean, there's so many things. But what I'm seeing is that over a 5-year period, business as usual, these are the potential savings we have if nothing else changes. If we don't make massive capital expenditures, this is profitability back to the organization. And so I think this is the most important thing. And Ed, I want you to land here. Ed, this is the money slide, so to speak. When we're at the point of really showing the organization what the potential is, because we are conservative estimators. Walk me through the 5-year projection now as a CFO. You're now informing me as a CEO, it's time to move forward with the Era Group. Here's why.
The introductory expense areas are those that we feel very comfortable with, that we can work on them, fairly easy. The data collection is pretty easy and simple. And so those are the ones we like to focus on to start with. The next section of the recommended, these are the same as the first section, but expanded for additional expense areas that we might help them with. And then the maximum are all the areas that were in the recommended section of the previous graph.
And so what I've just realized as a CEO is that if I focus on the introductory of the 13.8 million, there's a potential to save 5.2 million. You have me sold. And I want to thank the audience as we have walked through the powerful technology that is SpinView. Matt, Ed, it was a pleasure and an honor. I thank you so very much, and I look forward to introducing SpinView in a much deeper, more interactive area. For those who are listening in the car, definitely get out of the car, get to somewhere where you can view that incredible performance. Thank you so much, Matt and Ed.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Chris. You know, Matt, on that Pareto analysis where they had the gray and the green, I didn't know what that, I don't know what that is at the bottom there.
That's not one I go deep into. We'll call you back in a bit. I'm on my next meeting here, Ed, but I'll give you a ring later today.
All right, take care.